it's Lori here. I'm here today to do the second part of my June reading wrap up. I just wanted to go through some general stats because I broke this into two parts and I never really said how many books I read all month because the end of the month was yesterday. So overall, I wound up reading 23 books. That is a massive number. There are some graphic novels in there and there are some audiobooks in there, but I did wind up experiencing or listening or reading 23 things. The genres that I did read was thriller. I'm gonna say dystopian because Majesty is mostly a contemporary, but it does have a dystopian vibe, but it's a much more like less scary dystopian vibe. But I would consider it does have elements of dystopian, contemporary, fantasy, an anthology, fairy tale, middle grade, several graphic novels, and adult romance. Um, so yeah, let's dive into it. The first book that I finished reading was Moment of Truth by Casey West. This is a part of her series that it's like one is Love Life in the List, then it's Fame Fade in the First Kiss. I wound up thoroughly enjoying this book. I really, really liked it. I read this back to back with From Twinkle with Love, and I found them to be very, very similar, but also very, very unique. You basically follow this girl named Hadley, and she's a very, very competitive swimmer. And when a Heath Hall lookalike, and you learn about Heath Hall and Fame Fade in the First Kiss, winds up disrupting her swim meet, she wants to figure out who this gentleman is, and it sends her on a very, very fun journey. It's just a fun read. I wound up really, really liking it. I flew through it. Definitely might be my favorite Casey West book to date. I really wound up liking this one, so definitely a 5-star read for me. I would highly recommend it. I wouldn't read the summary because I think it just is like a little bit confusing, but for me, really, really liked it, and I can't wait to see what Casey West writes next. I've talked about this in a couple of my videos, but I've definitely been trying to diversify my reading habits this year, especially in light of recent events. I've really been trying to actually look at the authors before I read books. I normally don't do that. I normally just pick up whatever sounds interesting, but I'm really honestly trying to like be more diverse in my reading, both like fiction and nonfiction. So the next book I picked up was one that I heard amazing things about, but it's Slay by Brittany Morrison. This is a book that everyone talked about in late 2019, and it was high on my list, and I just never got around to reading it. But it basically follows this young girl, and she is one of the few African American students at a white private school. And she winds up making a video game that is basically inspired by the Black experience, and it is a very, very popular game to the African American community. Unfortunately, a murder happens that is that it happens because of her game, and it kind of gets her and her game kind of thrown into the center of, is it racist to have a game that only African Americans can play, and is it racist because it's being exclusionary? I thought it was a really important read, one that I really it was definitely a hard read, I'll say that. Like, being in that world, there was a lot of important conversations that I felt like were really important to have. The way the book went at the end was not something I necessarily expected, and I thought it was like a really interesting twist. I kind of felt the same with More Than Just a Pretty Face by that author. It kind of really expanded the experience of all the different African American experiences. I mean, it will not tell you all of them, but I thought that it really did a good job at like kind of fleshing out these characters and showing how different not everyone's the same. Just like we're not all the same, everyone's different. And I really liked and I appreciated how different characters had such a different idea about such an experience, and I really wound up liking it. I thought the ending was a little bit rushed, and I would have liked her to like flesh out the end of the book a little bit more, but I wound up really enjoying it, wound up giving it 3.5 stars, and would definitely check out more by this author in the future. If you are a fan of like Wild Card or Warcross, I think that this would be a great series for you because it kind of has a video game element but does talk about a lot of other issues as well. And I wound up really, really liking it. I'll definitely be checking out more by her in the future. I don't know if she's working on anything, but I'm definitely going to be looking out for that. And then the next book that I am going to chat about, sorry, I'm looking at my list, is an audiobook, and that is Cress by Marissa Meyer. This is also a book that I wound up reading for the Time Warp YA book club, and I wound up loving this. This is a reread for me, and this book is definitely remains to date one of my favorite in this series. I love Cress as a character, and the one thing I love about this series is it's a very unique series in that every book kind of focuses on one character, but you also get all the other point of views, and I don't think I've ever really read a book series like that. So like even though this is Cress's book, you still get Cinder's point of view, you still get Scarlett's point of view, and then you slowly meet the other characters. So it's a really unique series, and I don't think I've ever read a series like that had such a close connection. Like even like when you read like the Illuminae Files series, the books are very very separate until like the last one, but this is a very like complicated world, so it's just very very impressive. But this is basically, sorry, my phone keeps going off. This is like this fairy tale is Rapunzel, and I just love Cress as a character. I think I love Thorn as well, but I really loved the intensity of this story and where it went, and I'm really excited to start winter hopefully soon. That is a beast of a book, so we're actually going to take 2 months to read it in the Time Warp YA book club, and then we'll probably move on to a new series. But yeah, I'm really excited to dive into that. But Cress still remains my favorite. I'll be curious if that's true, like when I'm done with this reread, if I still like Cress. But I definitely right now this book was definitely my favorite. If you have not checked out this series, I highly recommend you do it. Cinder is a joy. Scarlett is definitely not my favorite in the series, but I'm really really loving my reread. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Princess Will Save You by Sarah Henning. I'm actually going to talk about this very, very briefly because there was a lot of issues that some tour companies had, that they were doing some very, very bad behavioral practices. So a bunch of authors wound up having to cancel their tours, and I still want to give them the publicity that they deserve. So I'm actually going to do a non-spoiler review for this that I don't normally do on my channel, but I really, really enjoyed this book. Wound up giving it 5 stars and really want to give Sarah Henning as much press as I can. But this book was great. I have never found a trope like this in my life before, and it was great. For those that don't know, I always fall for the underdog romance that almost never ever takes off. So this book was made for me, but it basically follows this young princess. Her dad is killed like in the first chapter of the book, and she's basically being groomed to become queen. But there's a lot of political stuff happening, and the love of her life is a stable boy that she's known her entire life, and he is actually kidnapped to get her to choose their people to like be her king. And she does not care about that, and she goes and save him. And so it's basically all that. I'm told it's a YA inspired by The Princess Bride. I've not really seen that movie, so I don't know if that's accurate, but I love this book. I love that it was dual point of view. We also got other point of views. So the ending was like, made me really, really surprised, and I'm not sure how I feel about it until we like get the next book. But be sure to check out my review for this. It will be up probably after this video goes up. I think I'll probably put up on Tuesday or Monday. But really, really like this. Definitely impressed. Definitely a 5-star read. And you should check it out when it comes out this week. It will be out Tuesday. So when you see my review, just go check that out and I'll talk a lot more about it. The next book I'm going to chat about is the next book from that we had to read for the Time Warp YA book class, which is Love, Sugar, Magic, A Dash of Trouble. This is another rather diverse read that I wound up really, really enjoying. But this is basically follows a little girl named Leo, or Leonora, and she is very determined to be included in all her family's actions. They own a bakery. But little does she know, her family is witches, and she gets in a little bit over her head when she tries to become a witch way before her time. But it was just a very, very fun read. I really loved how this, focused on the Day of the Dead. That was a big thing. I love it that there was a big family. There was a bunch of friendship stuff. This book definitely went more magical than I was necessarily expecting, but I found it to be super cute. There is 2 other books I definitely want to check out in this series. I did get this from Owl Crate like a couple of years ago, and I just found it to be super fun. I really am trying to diversify my reading habit in a bunch of different ways, and this was another one that pushed me to read this one. But yeah, thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. Wound up giving it 3.5 stars, and will definitely be checking out more by this author in the future. It was a perfect middle grade read, and I really, really wound up liking it. next book I'm going to chat about is one that I've heard so many good things about, and that is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuestion. This was a book that I bought because I've heard amazing things about it, but I love the concept of this novel, and I really wound up enjoying it as well, but it basically follows the Prince of England and the first son, his mom is president, and they wind up getting into they wind up having a PR nightmare because something happens, and then they wind up having to fake being friends, and you can guess where it leads, but I wound up enjoying it. I thought this was a much more political themed novel than I was expecting. It is set in the background of his mom getting elected for a second term. That's like the background of the novel. So it takes place over I would say about like a year. So it's definitely a long-term novel. It's not like 1 week. It's a very, very long novel, like time length wise. They also utilize like emails and text messaging, which I really wound up liking as well. I love the characters. I love the side characters that we met. I struggled a little bit with the pacing. I'll be a little bit honest. I think I got there was a lot of information sometimes, and I think I got a little bit lost in the details. Also, this is just something about me. I am not the biggest fans of sex scenes, and it's not like I don't like it in, any type of book. So I think that that part for me was maybe like a me thing. There is a lot of language in here. There is a lot of sex scenes here, but I really liked what it was trying to say. I said this before, bisexuality is not that seen in like novels that well, and I like that was really Alex's journey. I did struggle a little bit that this wasn't dual point of view. I would have liked to see Henry's point of view, but overall I wound up thoroughly enjoying it, wound up giving it 4 stars, and will definitely check out Casey McQuestion's next book whenever that comes out. But yeah, definitely would recommend that you pick it up. It was definitely a fun read, an engaging read, and one that if it was like a book about politics, but in like a very like background way, kind of like another book I'm going to talk about later. But again, a strong read, would definitely recommend it. The next book I'm going to pick up was actually kind of a surprise, and that is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. I got this arc at ALA, so it's not in color, but this is based off a web comic based on Alice Oseman book Radio Silent? I think, yeah. So it's basically based on a webcomic. There's 3 out, and I just think that the background says this great. Boy meets boy, boy become friends, boys fall in love. And that's literally what this whole volume is about. But you basically follow Nick and Charlie, and they wind up meeting, becoming friends, and maybe something more. The end of this book was so annoying, and I need to get book 2 and 3. I just am waiting for my library to open, or for me to just bite the bullet and buy them. I'll see if my mom needs anything from Amazon before I do that. But I just wound up loving this. I really love this art style. I was impressed. I read this in like 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and I just loved it. I really, really liked it. I thought it was a great, great read. I love the art style, and I'm definitely going to check more out, by Alice Oseman in the way of, like, physical reads, because I heard she has quite a few out, but definitely a strong read, definitely a 5-star read for me, because really, really enjoyed it. And thank you, ALA, for providing me with an arc. The next book I'm going to chat about is Her Royal Highness by Rachel Hawkins. I actually picked this up this month because I wanted to read some more royalty themed books. This is the sequel to Prince Charming. When I read it, it was called The Royals. But this follows Millie and Flora. Flora, if you remember, is like the princess, and they wind up going to a boarding school together, and Millie and Flora are roommates, and one thing leads to another. And yeah, this is another LGBTQ themed romance. Wound up really, really liking it. I love the setting. I love the characters. I said it in one of my things. This book also has like every couple of chapters it has let's see if I can find one. Every couple of chapters it has like a like notes from or newspaper articles. So I like that kind of helped flesh out the world. I wound up really, really liking it. I wound up giving it 3 stars. I wonder if we're ever going to get a book 3, because I think this came out like in 2019, I think it came out. So I wonder if we're ever going to get a book 3, but definitely wound up liking it and would definitely recommend that you check it out. So I would actually go back and probably read Prince Charming because it's been a while, but I wound up really, really liking it. And we do see those characters in this book as well. Briefly. This is the book I kind of went in knowing I don't think I was going to love it as much as everyone else did. But Leah on the Offbeat is the next book that I wound up reading. guys, I just didn't love it. I love Simon versus the Homo sapien agenda. I love the upside of Unrequited. I struggled a lot with Leah. I will admit, this wasn't the romance I necessarily wanted for her, and I struggled like being in her head. And I said this before, I sometimes struggle with unlikable characters, and I wouldn't say Leah's unlikable, but I think that she just, her head was a little bit of a hard place to be. This also does deal with bisexuality. But you know what? I was so happy to be back in Simon's world and be with the characters. I just wish I was in another character's head. I think that I would have liked the story a lot more if I was in another character's head, seeing Leah's through someone else's eyes, because I struggled a lot. I gave this book like 3 stars. The highlight of this book was being back in Simon's world. I'm definitely going to check out Love Creekwood, which is kind of like the epilogue sequel to all of these. I liked it. I didn't love it. I probably won't be keeping it. But I do want to check out that book. I also want to check out Becky Albertelli's newest one that's out that I have an arc of. So wound up liking it, didn't wind up loving it, and yeah, it was a little bit of a letdown. And I really do like Leah as a character, but this book just did not land right for me at all. I just didn't like I think I struggled with the relationship. So, but yeah. The next book I'm going to chat about is one that I found about from Bookable's channels, and that is The Upside of Falling by Alex Lake. I picked this book up on a whim, and it basically follows these 2 characters, Becca and Brett, and they wind up getting involved in a fake dating relationship, and it leads to a lot more complicated elements. Becca's kind of over love. She doesn't think love exists because of her family's dynamics, and Brett kind of comes in and like saves the day, and they kind of wind up fake dating. But then you realize that Brett learns his picture perfect life isn't so perfect, so they kind of combined. I wound up thoroughly liking it. The one thing I loved about this book is that we got both characters' perspectives, and it really, really fleshed them out. I also love that we had some flashback friendship moments. I also love that their home lives were very, very different, and I really, really liked exploring that. And I just liked the fake dating elements. I thought that she handled it so well. I just like the progression that they went through, and I'll definitely check more out by this author in the future. I know that this was originally like a Wattpad novel, but if you're looking for a super fun and easy contemporary, this might be your ticket, because I wound up really, really enjoying it. I read it in like a day. The next book that I wound up picking up was Most Likely by Sarah Watson. This is from the author of The Bull Type, and the premise of this book is the book starts off so many years in the future where we're electing a female president. And then the rest of the book is where you follow this group of 4 friends as they're going through high school, and one of these girls becomes elected president. I simply love this book. It took me a good like 6 or 7 chapters to kind of remember whose head we're in, because we do follow all 4 girls, and at some points I got really confused like whose head I was in. But I just loved it. I thought that it was so diverse, so great. You have so many, and they deal with so many topics. They deal with adoption. They deal with, like a rebellion cause. They deal with getting into college and the SATs. And it was a really, really well-crafted novel. They also had some LGBTQ references, and then they had some disability rep, and I just wound up really, really liking it. The person who I thought was going to be elected wasn't elected, but it didn't really matter because I cared about them all so much. I just love that friendship is really at the heart of this novel. That's why I like The Bull Type, because that show is all about friendship. So was this. Wound up really liking it and winds up giving it 4.75 stars. I heard a rumor we're definitely going to get a sequel, and I will definitely be checking it out. All my books are now on the floor. That's okay. But the last 2 books kind of go together, so I'm going to talk about them really, really briefly. But I read 2 volumes of the Babysitter Club graphic novel that I've been trying to catch up on. So I wound up reading Dawn and the Impossible 3, which here is a photo. And Crazy's Big Day. The reason I really started reading these was because I got this one last year at BEA, or no book kind of thing. So, and also the Netflix series is coming out in like a couple of weeks. So I really wanted to reread some version of this story. When I was younger, I said this in a reading blog that I don't know if I'm posting because I don't think I have enough footage, but I was much more invested in the Little Sister series. So I read very, very few of these. So I've never really read The Babysitter's Club. I think I read a few of them, and I watched the TV show when I was much younger. But I never wound up reading these books. So I think with reading the graphic novels is a great way for me to experience the series. I love this art style. The first one followed Dawn as she deals with kind of a hard situation where a mom is kind of relying on her too much when she's dealing with the aftermaths of a divorce. And then this one follows the lead up to Christy's mom's wedding. And I think I have 2 more volumes out that are out right now. There's Boy Crazy Stacy, I think, and then Logan Likes Mary Ann. Logan Likes Mary Ann's coming out in September, and I just rented the Stacy one. So hopefully I get around to those. But yeah, I actually had a really, really good reading month. I know eventually when our life gets back to normal, I won't have these amazing reading months, but I'm just grateful that I'm able to read so much and that I have some time and that I'm trying to follow the guidelines the best that I can and trying to stay safe. I hope you guys are too. If I had to pick some highlights for this whole reading month, some of my highlights would definitely be Majesty, which I talked about in my last reading vlog, Twinkle with Love from my last reading vlog, Moment of Truth, and The Princess Will Save You. Those are my top 5 books that I wound up really, really liking, or 4. And the ones that I struggled a little bit was Scavenger of the Stars, How to Love, and Leah on the Offbeat. But let me know in the comments what are some books that you recently read that you just simply adored, or books that you didn't love, and I'll be back for another video soon. Take care, guys, and be well.